For a lot of salespeople, a scary area, they worry about getting objections. And here's a question. Why would you worry about objections, you know? Objections are showing interest. If the client has no interest in what you're doing, they're not going to ask any clarifying questions. They're not going to put up any concerns they have. They're just going to sit very quietly and say, well, thank you very much. We'll think about it. If you ever get that answer, that's not a very good sign. You're much better to get people questioning you about what you're talking about, having hesitations or concerns. Much better reaction. So if you think getting no objections is a good sign, it's a bad sign. It shows, unless they're saying, I'll take it, right? Unless they're saying, I'll take it, it's a bad sign. It's better to get people questioning you for a bit more clarity, a bit more detail. Then you know, oh, okay, there's some interest here. Now, maybe you can resolve that problem, that hesitancy, or maybe you can't. But at least you're in the frame for trying to get to a point of resolution there. Okay? So don't see objections as a problem. And knowing how to handle them is very critical in being very successful as a salesperson, because you need to overcome those concerns. So we find ways to have points of agreement, so we lower resistance. They might think the problem is this big. We might break down the numbers, just the example given then, and make it down to like 200 yen a day as the problem solution, right? So it's no longer millions, it's 200 yen a day as a solution. That doesn't sound so bad, does it? Millions down to 200 yen a day, that seems doable. We try and dig out any questions they might have. Now, you can mentally picture an iceberg, right? You see the waterline, no anchors, right? You see the waterline, and you got a little bit of ice on the top there, but underneath is this massive big chunk of ice. That's your problem with clients. What you see above the surface, what they might say, is not really where the problem lies. The problem may be what they're not telling you. Our job is to dig out what's under the waterline. What is that really big concern they're not sharing with us? Okay, if you get fooled by the initial objection is the problem, and you don't solve the one under the waterline, you'll never get the sale. If you don't get any objections and you don't get a yes, then you've got a really big problem. All right, so we also have to respond to the objections with confidence. That's how we're going to solve it. So we've done the planning, we've done rapport, interest, solution. Now we're getting into motive, all right, and commitment. So here's the objection rule. Find points of agreement. Clarify issues. Provide compelling reasons to proceed. That's our rule, right? That's what we're looking for. Resolve objections by finding points of agreement, so we don't focus on the negatives. We clarify the issues. What is the real problem here? Not what's on the surface above the waterline. What's the real issue below the waterline, under the ice there, that's really the sticking point? And then provide compelling reasons to proceed. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So we have a formula here, the overview. When you hear the objection, don't react to it straight away. Now, it sounds very simple, but often salespeople jump straight in. The client says something, and they want to jump straight in with the answer. Now, rarely is the first thing that pops into your head the best response. Don't go with your first response. Don't ever go with your first response. Go with your second or third considered response. Why would we do that? Why wouldn't we just go with our first spontaneous response?
If you answer too quickly, the client might think you're not really listening to them.
The client might assume we're not listening by jumping in too quickly. Why else? What do you think?
It's not considered. It might be a bad answer.
It might be an extremely bad answer, right? Could it possibly be an emotional answer, right? We get an objection that triggers the chemicals in the body, right? Chemical reaction, and out comes an answer. Why else?
Not giving them a chance to finish it. They might solve their own problem.
Yeah, you jump in, they haven't finished, they might actually be posing a rhetorical question, and they might be going to answer, but you just jump straight in there and cut them off. What else, Eunice? What do you think?
Always smart to be thoughtful, I guess.
Yeah.
The first answer they...
Yeah. Think about what they're saying. And the way we do that is we use a cushion, okay? So then we'll go through a series of steps. Now, I'm just looking in your manual here. Let's go to, we're now in, 4.2 sounds good to me. All right, okay. If you look here, this is the overview. So there's quite a lot of detail there. Well, this is the overview, but each of these are categories. See here, it's talking about you uncover, you question why they object, you ask if there's any additions, have we met the conditions you need, anything else, or you just try and bury that objection altogether, and does that solve your problem? We basically check all those things. The category is, as it says here, sometimes objections are not really serious things. Sometimes they're sort of ridiculous objections people just throw out because they're going through a chemical reaction too, usually driven by fear. So we look at that, we say, well, look, actually, do I really need to answer that? That's rather hopeless or trivial. Or if it's a misconception, you better fix it. Misconception, you better fix it. Or is this trying to just put me off? Or is this they've got some prejudice around what I'm talking about because they have some negative experience in the past which wasn't us? Or is this actual genuine objection? So you've got to determine that. Do I answer it now? Should I answer it later? Should I actually have thought about this before we even get to this stage through my questioning side or my solution side and address it there? Because knowing this objection is likely to come up, I address it early so it doesn't come up. Or do I never address it? And then the steps, if I have to go back and I've got a problem, I may need to go back and start again. I haven't asked them properly, so I may need to build rapport again. I may need to just do some quick questioning because I obviously haven't uncovered some problem, and then go back through that process of solution and then getting a trial closed again on motive. Or do I deny that this is an issue? Do I admit this is an issue? They are correct. Do I reverse it? Particularly around price. They say price is the problem. I say, well, look, you need to pay this amount of money. That's a good thing. Because the value attached to that price is so great in the long term, that's going to save you much, much more. So you reverse it or you explain it. So that's just a very brief overview of these 5 categories here. And then you go into a trial close. So why do you think we get objections? What's driving that?
Negotiate a low price.
Could be a negotiation tactic. Yeah, what else?
Just go away. They don't want to talk to us.
And why is that?
They're busy or they're not interested in advertising.
And why not?
I think it might not be useful for them.
They don't see any value, right? We haven't been successful in showing enough value from what we're offering. Why else? Why do they raise objections?
Control.
Control. What does that mean?
They don't want to feel like they're just getting talked at. Like they want to feel like they have some sort of not be guided by the sale, but rather be, some sense of I'm making this decision because I feel like it's good for me, so therefore I need to go through the process.
Yeah. There's an old expression, everyone loves to own, or everyone loves to buy, but no one wants to be sold to. Okay? And that's true. And that's why in the Dale Carnegie system of sales, as you've heard, it's extremely low pressure. Consultative sales. It's not pushy salesperson. It's got a very good structure for it, for us to follow, but it's not pushy, hard driving sales. So you don't want to trigger that reaction. Okay? All right. What else?
Risk.
Risk, yes. And risk comes back to what?
They're not 100% sure what they're doing.
They're not sure about what we're saying. Maybe there's no track record. Or maybe the previous experience was pretty bad. Okay? So they're working off a negative game plan here from the past. Or maybe they bought something from a not skilled, not ethical salesperson which is blown up. And maybe they had to take the blame for that and hurt them in their careers, and they're very hesitant to go again. Right, what else? Why do we get objections?
Responsibility.
Sorry?
Responsibility.
Responsibility, they don't want to take responsibility.
Responsibility for the decision.
Yeah, that's right. If you don't do anything, nothing can go wrong, can it? Particularly salarymen, right? The last thing they want to do is take accountability. You work in a big company, the last thing you want to do in Japanese context is take any accountability. So by doing nothing, we don't achieve anything, but they don't worry about that. They worry about the downside, which is risk. Right? So we need to show that the risk is not there. What else? What else is driving objections?
They imagine a burden on their time that they don't have. Like, oh gosh, this is going to be a long process.
What we're suggesting may take up effort on their part, time on their part that they don't have, funds that they can allocate but they're not necessarily sure this is the right time to allocate them or not. So here's the point. Are there a million reasons why people shouldn't buy? Yeah. But are there probably 10, 15, maybe, pretty common cases, predictable objections, would you think? Yeah. In your experience, you'll find the same, probably 5 actually, not even 15, probably the 5 same objections come up. Okay. Price, don't have a requirement, don't need extra clients. I'd love to be in that position myself. That'd be good. So this is something where we can predict, before we get into the meeting, what some possible objections are. And so this is what I said before about your role play practice. Great opportunity to practice these things before you get in the meeting. Don't practice on the client. Okay? Key rule, don't practice on your client. Practice with your colleagues. And then you have that fluency before we get in there. So let's think about, we talk about cushions. Okay? So if you look on page 4.5, some cushions there. Now a cushion is a very simple idea. A cushion is something that doesn't inflame the objection. It doesn't inflame the situation, and it doesn't agree with the objection either. For example, say the objection is, look, your price is too high. The cushion should not be, oh, so you think our price is too high. That's not a great cushion. Why is that not a great cushion? You're agreeing with it, right? You're reinforcing what they've just said. How about, no, it's not. What's wrong with that cushion? Too confrontational, right? So the cushion should not disagree and should not agree with what the statement has been. So you might say something neutral like, well, you know, expense allocation is always an important consideration for companies. Who's going to disagree with that? Expense allocation is always an important consideration for companies. I said the price is too high. You talk about expense allocation is an important issue. In the time it takes you to say that, your 4 or 5 seconds of brain time can start thinking about where we go next. All right? And this comes back to some of these issues we talked about before. Do I deny? Do I question? How do I respond? So you're not going to your first spontaneous outburst. You've actually got a chance to think about it. So the cushion should not be something that's going to stir up the situation, make it worse, or something that's going to weaken your position by agreeing with what they say. All right? So we'll go around this way. You give the objection, you cushion it. You give the objection, cushion it like this. In the circle, go. You see here, you've asked to try, you've done the capability statement, fact, bridge to benefit, benefit to application, application to evidence, evidence to trial, close. Then they've hit you with a problem. We don't have any budget, last time we dealt with you guys was a failure, or whatever it might be. We do not try and answer the objection at that moment. And we certainly don't try and answer it with our first response. We give them a cushion, buy ourselves a little bit of thinking time. Then as you see here, we've got a couple of choices. And a great one is to go into and ask a question, a non-threatening question to clarify that objection. So when they say, for example, give me that objection again, Aaron.
When we advertised with you guys in the past, I didn't get one phone call.
Oh, why was that? What happened?
So I guess nobody saw the advertisement I put in and thought it was interesting. Let's just glanced over it.
And how many times did it go in?
Just the once.
Just the once. So now you've got some important information, right? You haven't tried to fight with the client. You've got some more information. Now, if he'd said, we advertised 10 times with you and got no response, your explanation would be entirely different if he said once and got no response. Do you see what I'm saying? You're going to answer that objection in an entirely different way depending on what he said.
Sorry.
But you've got to know which is which. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I've had people inflate the amount of business that they've done with us in the past. Oh, yeah, we've done tons of stuff with you guys. They've done like 2 ads. So, like over 3 years or something. So
Ask the question.
Sure.
Well, presumably, if they're an existing client, you should already know that. Mm-hmm. If they say, we've done tons of stuff with you and you're getting results, you say, well, I look back in the records, I can only find an ad in the November, December issue back in 2012. Did you do anything since that? Right? So now you're starting to shrink it down to, what happened in 2012? What happened in 2012? We had a big earthquake, big tsunami. Nuclear power reactor blew up. Business wasn't so good. Where are we today? We're 2015. Times have changed. We've moved on. The economy is different. The share market's doubled. The yen's weak. There's a whole raft of differences between the previous occasion and today. So we won't know that, though, unless we dig in and question the objection. Right? So we hear the objection, don't react to it. Don't try and answer it. Cushion to give yourself that break between I hear what you say and I want to answer it straight away without knowing anything. To hear it, put a cushion, think, okay, now I'm going to question this. And I'm going to keep digging. Why is that? And so why is that? Because as they give you more information, it gives you more power to solve their problem because you'll have a better perspective on what the real issue is. See how we go with that? So questioning is very, very critical. And then you see here, addition. Now that's that iceberg thing again, right? They might tell you, yes, this is why, but it may not be the real reason. Don't accept that what they tell you initially is the real reason. Dig a bit deeper, a couple of times. Okay, so you've told me that you advertised a couple of years ago twice, didn't get the reaction you wanted, and this has been a concern for you. Apart from that, are there any other concerns you have? So you park that, what that objection, then go deeper. They might have something else. Well, we've got a budget issue. We've actually overspent in the first quarter. We've got a directive from headquarters to cut back. Right? That's valuable information. So it may not be the problem was 2 years ago and didn't get a result. The real problem might be, well, headquarters said don't spend anything in this quarter till things balance out. So your conversation now might be about the fourth quarter or the third quarter. Or it might be about, can we move some money from somewhere else to make sure that the third and fourth quarters are really strong? Change the base of where you're going with it. Ask, is there anything else? And ask more than once, because people won't necessarily tell you everything. And apart from that, there's anything else. And then check, So now you've given your answer to the objection. Then you clarify, well, does that meet your concerns? I've given you my answer, does that meet your concerns? Okay, just to check, because you may have addressed it, you may not have addressed it, you don't know. Get feedback from them. And this is here, it could also be, like addition, is there anything else? Apart from that, is there anything else that's concerning you? Or you then try and bury it. So you've had the objection come up, you've answered it, then you check to see whether you've actually finished that objection off or not. So I've listened to what you've had to say, I've told you what we can do. Does that take care of that problem for you? Bury it. Make sure that that's dead before you move on. Don't leave it there. You've got to deal with it. You can't ignore it. And then finally, they might have some small objection, but you ignore it in a way and you keep going. Because the big picture is overall better for them. So you say, well, I think we've addressed that, haven't we? I think that that concern is not really the central issue, is it? That's not going to amount to a deal, not a deal stopper. It's not going to amount to a big problem, is it? And check. Right, so you've got this list of things. Trial close goes into cushion, question it, anything else that's bothering them, answer it, does that meet your concern, anything else bothering you, have I dealt with that objection completely, and then make sure that doesn't amount to anything that's going to be a stopper for going ahead. How do we react to the objections? If we are fearful of objections, then we will come across ourselves as rather unsure of what we're saying, hesitant about what we're saying, and the client will feel that. They'll think, oh, this person's not really sure about what they're saying, so why should I believe what they're saying? Or we might be ferocious in the sense of become very aggressive and start to argue with the client. Now you think, in the sales industry, that would be an absolutely ridiculous reaction, but many salespeople are unskilled and they do react very negatively and they want to get into an arm wrestle with the client because the client may say something that they find, well, that's a ridiculous idea, or I don't accept that, and they want to debate the point with the client. You can debate with the client as much as you like, you are never going to win that debate. It's better to try and understand what's behind that comment, what's behind that pushback from the client, dig a bit deeper, find out what's going on. Or you can react with confidence. If you know what you're doing in terms of handling hesitation, concern, then the whole thing gets a lot easier. And this is where we're trying to make sure we have a process. So if we said there are probably 10, 15, but it usually comes down to about 5 sort of common objections, very key objections that buyers will have to the proposition we're putting forward. And some of them are here. It's the current provider's doing a great job, very happy with them. Okay? Not sure about your capacity around delivery, particularly in Japan, where delivery, guarantee of delivery is a very, very critical point for Japanese companies because there are so many layers in the distribution system here. Everybody interconnects with everybody else. So if you have a delay at your end, their clients down the line get delayed as well. They lose face, they lose credibility, they lose the trust of their distribution line, and the last thing they want is to have that happen. So when they're dealing with foreign enterprises, there's a lot of concern about your reliability around doing what you say you're going to do. Of course, price. Price is the number that's on the invoice or the number that's on the proposal. But price is not the real thing here. We've got to remember, we've got to talk about value. Cost, price are not the same thing. If you buy something at a low price, but you have to keep replacing it all the time because it breaks down, the actual cost of that is very high. So price, cost, not the same thing, and we should be talking about value, not price. And then, of course, quality. You say one thing, how will I know if that's actually what I'm going to receive? So these are very, very common objections that come up. And before we even get to the meeting, we can anticipate some or many of these will come up. So the last thing you want to be doing is thinking off the top of your head, oh, there's a hesitation or there's a problem. Geez, I wonder what the answer to that is. You need to have that answer already in your mind so it comes out very confidently, very smoothly. No ums and no ahs, particularly when you're answering these sorts of hesitations, objections. If they hit you with that price, I think that's going to be too much for us for our budget. Not a great start to answering that particular problem, right? So these are things we need to anticipate. So we talk about having a cushion, which gives us some thinking time. So when you get the pushback or the hesitation or the concern, do not react to it immediately. As soon as you hear it, the first thing in your head has got to be, I need to cushion this concern. Because that will then put a break, no chemical, emotional, immediate, spontaneous reaction to what the client is saying. Instead, your brain says, okay, cushion, then I need to go to the next stage, which is likely going to be questioning it. So cushions don't agree with the statement. Look, that price is really very high. I see, so your concern is our price is too high. Bad cushion. You're just reinforcing their viewpoint, right? You don't want to disagree with it. Then you get into an argument with the client. You want to say something that is rather neutral, and then, for example, they talk about it's out of our budget or the price is very high, then we talk about, well, it's very important for companies to get their allocation of expenses right. Very neutral statement. Enough thinking time so we start to find points of agreement. Don't jump in, shows you're actually listening. So after we've done a trial close, we've got some pushback, we cushion it, we then go into questioning it. Why do you think that's going to be an issue in this quarter? Or why do you think that delivery aspect is going to be a problem? Because they will give us a very, very brief statement of their concern. Very, very brief. It's like shorthand or it's like a headline for a bigger concern. So as soon as we get that concern or hesitation, we'll dig in a bit deeper. Remember the iceberg analogy? You have the sea level here. Iceberg appears above the surface, but there's a much bigger chunk of ice under the surface. What is the key point under the line there, under the waterline? So after questioning it, they may not give us the whole thing. They may give us a minor irritant or minor concern. The real concern is still hidden. So we need to ask them, after they've told us their concern, is there anything else apart from that that's a concern for you? Keep digging. Okay, keep digging. Then, once we actually give them prospect of solving that problem, if we were able to overcome that delivery concern you have, would that meet your concern? Would that take out that concern for you? So you're testing whether it actually is the real concern or not, because it still may not be coming out. Is there anything else apart from that? So park that, put it over here. Is there anything else that's concerning you? Dig in. So bury it means, well, having answered it then, you've answered the hesitation. Well, I think we've taken care of that now, haven't we? Check that we've actually, they think we've taken care of it. Because if they don't think we've taken care of it, you've got to keep going. Or, well, it looks like that concern doesn't really amount to very much in the big scheme of things. This was the key issue, and I think we've dealt with that, haven't we? So you found a minor problem and the major problem. You've taken out the minor problem because you've dealt with the major problem. And then we're responding, answering that question. Right, so that's the way to uncover the hidden objections. I'll just go forward a little bit. So we have our planning stage, rapport building stage, building the trust, getting permission to ask questions. We go into interest, which is what's their interest, asking questions, as is, should be, barrier, payout questions. they have 4 different personality styles. They're expressive, they're a driver, they're an amiable, they're an analytical. They might be the CEO, they might be the CFO, they might be the CIO, they might be a user buyer. After we've discovered what they want, when we provide the solution, we give our capability statement. Yes, we can do that. Here's a general statement of what we've done. Here's a specific example of what we've done with evidence. Then we go into, well, here's the fact, the feature of what we do. We bridge across to the benefit. We take the benefit, we apply the application, we give some evidence to back that up, and then we give the trial close. Now, the trial close is where we're going to get some information here about, okay, this is going to go forward, or there are additional concerns or additional questions they have which we have not answered yet. All right. So again, we hear that concern. Is it something that's pretty hopeless? It's not even worth answering. Go and dig for the deeper thing. Is it trivial? Something's not particularly important. Have they got some prejudice against what we're suggesting? They may have heard something incorrect about our organisation or our product or our service. Misconception, they don't quite understand how it works, so they're thinking this isn't going to be good for them. Is it a genuine concern, or is it just a put-off? So when we hear that, we have to make a judgment. Where does this concern fit into the scheme of things? So that tells us, do we do something about it now, or do we just ignore it and deal with it later? Or we never bother with it because it's not the real one. Or if we've been doing this for a little while and we've had an opportunity to meet different clients, we find out that certain things come up more often than others. So we anticipate that. So in our solution part, when we're giving the solution, we deal with those issues early so that they don't come up later as something is stopping the client going forward. All right, so we've gone through dealing with concerns now. Any questions on objection handling, concern handling, hesitation handling so far? Where's the first question? Don't practice on the client. With the opportunity to work together, pair work, role play work, someone puts up a concern, then you practice the process. So it becomes very fluid and very fluent. So when you're sitting there, you're very calm. Client feels your confidence because you're calm. Your answer is very succinct, but also very powerful and very persuasive. So you get around that problem. All good? All good? Okay. Well, let's move on.